It's buffering. There's always like a 3-second delay, and then I never know exactly when it's live until I'm like, oh, there it is. But then they've listened to me talk about how it's buffering. All right, we're good to go. We're officially live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. It's officially live on Facebook with two officially wonderful people, even though they're officially affiliated with a university that I don't root for, but that's okay. I still love them.
And I'm even on campus for you, Derek.
I know.
All
I still
for
love
you.
you, and I still root for you two as individuals and for all the wonderful things that you're doing. I just hope that you guys never win a football game for the rest of the eternity, really, if I'm honest.
Keep hoping.
It's not going to happen. Like, I know that my expectations are unrealistic. But what are you going to do? So we're live on Facebook. If you're watching already, go ahead and do me a quick favor. Dustin's doing it right now. I wish I could screen share him. We would just demonstrate. Reach up, click like, click share. Share this to our news feed or to your news feed. I don't think people sometimes realize the exponential impact it has when you share a video like this on your news feed. Because let's say you're really popular and you've got like 2,000 friends. And then let's say maybe you're not so popular, you've only got a couple hundred. But either way, that automatically reaches people that we would never reach if you didn't share it. And we know that issues with mental health and issues with addiction are so pervasive in our society, especially during the COVID pandemic, that I guarantee you there are people on your newsfeed that either are struggling or have family members who are struggling with these types of issues. And you never know whose life you potentially could save by sharing this. So share it on your newsfeed. We're glad you're joining us. It's Monday, March 1st. We've survived another month of 2021. And here we are. So thanks for joining us. This is Parents Helping Parents Live. If you're familiar with Parents Helping Parents, great. If you're not, Parents Helping Parents is a nonprofit organization based here in the Oklahoma City metro area. And basically the mission is to provide education, resources, and peer support to parents who have a child any age, 15 or 55, who are struggling with substance use disorders. And so they primarily do that through a variety of local chapters: Oklahoma City, Norman, Edmond, Tulsa, I think Wichita now. And then we offer this live stream for parents who can't be at an actual live chapter. I say live chapters, all of our chapters right now, because of the COVID pandemic, are being cautious and are meeting online via Zoom altogether. And we haven't resumed that yet. So if you want more information about Parents Helping Parents, about meetings, about how you can be involved, check out their website, parentshelpingparents.info, or follow them on Facebook at Parents Helping Parents Inc. On Facebook there. So it's real important for me to mention that as an organization, Parents Helping Parents has no professional expertise or experience. They've only walked in the shoes of loved ones. And so any outreach that Parents Helping Parents does should never be considered a substitute for professional counseling, legal advice, medical advice, all of those type of things we think are really appropriate if you need them. That's just not what we do as an organization. As an organization, we connect parents to those resources. We offer some education. We share our own experiences. Luckily, tonight, we actually have some professional expertise on hand, but that's on them, not on Parents Helping Parents, right? So we're glad you're joining us. I'm really excited about tonight. These are two of my favorite people on the planet. I don't think that's too bold of a statement. I don't know a lot of people planet-wide, but I know a lot of people in Oklahoma, and these are two of my favorite. So,
definitely two of your favorite Sooners, right?
You know, I was gonna say maybe my two favorite Sooners. I don't know if I know. Well, I've got a buddy of mine that lives in Nashville that's an OU fan. I was in his wedding, so he's probably in the. You guys are in the top five for sure.
Top five.
Easy
If
top five.
If MySpace still existed, we would be part of the cool kids.
Yeah, I think so. So. I think somebody was trying to bring back MySpace too. I read, but
good luck.
You know, it was cool having that song play when you got on there and all that kind of stuff. So let's do this. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, ladies first,
All
and
right.
then we'll get this party started. We'll start talking about cool stuff.
Great. Thank you, Derek. So my name is Jennifer Dell, and I work at the University of Oklahoma for the School of Social Work. So I'm one of our social work faculty, and I primarily work with the undergraduates in our program. So it's juniors and seniors. Social work is a degree completion. And a little plug for social work, it's Social Work Month now, Derek. So March is Social Work Month. So there you go.
So I hate to interrupt, but I want to digress just for a second. There are lots of different months, and there has to be some overlap, right?
Probably multiple overlap for every month.
Yeah.
It's also Women's Month. So I get I'm a woman and a social worker. So I should just get, all the things. And I am here tonight because 2 years ago, Dustin was fairly new to campus and approached me, knew I had, before I worked at OU, I worked for 15 years for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. So licensed alcohol and drug counselor and a licensed social worker. So Dustin knew that was my background. And Dustin said, hey, do you want to be our faculty advisor for this student organization? And I said, yes, not really knowing what that would entail. And that has taken us down this wonderful road the last 2 years where we've gotten to do lots of exciting things that I know we'll get to tell you more about tonight.
Excellent. Jennifer, it's always great to see you. Thank you for taking out time of your night to join us.
Of course.
Big D's.
Well, I'm Dustin. I am the president of Students in Recovery, or founder of Students in Recovery. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. So what that means for me is that I haven't had any mind-altering substances, drugs, or alcohol, or anything in between that since 2011. And I know that my family is grateful for that. I know that my friends are grateful for that, and my community is grateful for that. I definitely know that the state of Texas is grateful for that. So, so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do anything on behalf of Parents Helping Parents. Yeah, I love the organization. I love the mission. And that's what it's about. Addiction is a family disease. And oftentimes we leave out, what's kind of going on behind the scenes, because the person dealing with substance use disorder kind of takes the icing on the cake, and everybody else kind of just falls to the wayside. So I really love the fact that Parents Helping Parents really rallies around parents to give them that support that they need and that they crave. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share my experience and help in any way that I can.
Dustin, 2011 would be 10 years ago. At what point do you hit 10?
I hit 10 on May 26th.
That's coming right around the corner, man. Congratulations.
It'll be right after he gets his graduate degree. So that'll be lots to celebrate in May for Dustin.
That's a big month. So, thinking back to 10 years ago, Dustin, did you ever imagine celebrating 10 years of sobriety the same month that you were going to complete a master's degree?
I will say emphatically, absolutely not. The bar was not set high, my friend. It was really just get a job and try to maintain some length of recovery, and then just do that for a long time, because I had never done anything consistently this long in my life, other than probably annoy my mom, and who's probably watching. So hi, Mom. Just terrorize people, and I've never done anything as consistent as I've done with my recovery, but everything in my life is a direct result of my recovery. And I mean that in the fullest extent possible. I wouldn't be here with Parents Helping Parents if it wasn't for my recovery. I wouldn't have met Jennifer Dell, wouldn't have started Students in Recovery. I definitely would not be getting a master's degree, which is absolutely beyond any dream that I'd ever had for myself. And it's a direct result of that. And the beautiful thing is that everybody has been in the wake of that, right? So my relationship with my mom's gotten better. My relationship with my sister, my friends, my nephews, everybody that comes in contact with me has gotten better. Just like when I was in my active addiction, it affected everyone like that just as gravely. So To answer your question, absolutely not. But I'm definitely grateful to be on this journey for sure.
Yeah, the first thing that I want to ask kind of both you guys to address is something that I think Dustin addressed just a little bit, but I kind of want to roll back and hit it a little harder. Dustin, you described addiction as a family disease. So, Jennifer, like from a social work, from a clinical perspective, when we talk about family disease, I kind of want you to talk about, why that's important. But also, Dustin, for you, like what does that mean that that's a family disease, and how did you see that play out in your life? And I will just kind of let you guys decide who goes first.
Yeah, Jennifer can speak to it, and I can give my experience.
Yeah. So the person that's it's actively using, they're not the only one, as we know, impacted by the use. Dustin, you said it well. It causes that ripple. And so those choices that individual is making, they impact their child, they impact their parent, they impact their sister, they impact their best friend. And so we call it a family disease because no one is suffering alone, although it is an isolating disease. So it can feel very lonely. So the parent who's worrying about their child can feel very, very alone, or the child can feel like mom, dad, sister, aunt, uncle, they don't get it. They don't even, how do I even begin to ask for help? Because they won't understand why I continue to use, how I can love them, and also be wreaking havoc on the family at the same time. So it's a family disease because it impacts the entire family. No one is immune. It's also a family disease because everyone has to own their own recovery. So it's not just the individual that was actively using that needs to take a long, hard look at their self and think, how can I keep myself safe? How can I have my own coping skills? How can I make sure that I have those both formal? So maybe I need to find my own counselor, or maybe just informal supports. How can I find a group? Parents Helping Parents being a great example of that I can plug into and know that there's people I can talk to that have been there or are currently in the thick of it that they can go through. So as a professional, I have definitely seen, that really impact families. My own family addiction has wreaked havoc on that. That's something that I'm really proud that my father has been in recovery for almost, I guess he'll celebrate 38 years this summer. So that's a really long time. So I was itty bitty when he found recovery, but still it was something that I grew up with, him talking about being in recovery and being very proud of the work that it took in being in recovery. And my childhood was drastically different than it would have been if he wouldn't have found that when I was almost knocking on my second birthday. So I think just to sum it up, it's a family disease because the entire family is impacted and the entire family has to make that decision. How can we turn the corner? How can we find help? And sometimes that's finding help together. Sometimes that means family members are finding that at different times and they have their own journeys. But ultimately the right supports are essential so that those paths can be carved forward.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback on that too. You touched on it, right? Like that it's a family disease in the sense, like I guess a more technical approach is that when you own a home or you're living in an apartment, that your homeostasis in your apartment, right? You like to keep your temperature at a certain level. And when you're living with someone who has substance use dependency disorder, that homeostasis is lopsided, right? So you're never at that perfect temperature because all of your focus and energy is on that one person. So oftentimes a lot of children, like siblings, will feel left out, and then they become like the scapegoat. They try to find their agency within their family because this one person is taking up all of mom and dad's, or mom and mom or dad and dad's time. And so, I guess even more technically is that like the neurological effects that it has on the family, right? So what research is kind of finding out right now is that folks that live with someone who has substance use disorder is that it's actually affecting part of the prefrontal cortex almost as much as someone who's actively in addiction. And that's pretty powerful because what that's doing is that you're in fight or flight mode, right? And that's what I found. I saw that with my mom. I see that in other parents that have reached out to me, right? And it's they want to fight for their child, right? And they're going to do everything that they can to save them. And a lot of times it's too much, right? Because there's enabling going on. There's that homeostasis that I talked about. It's unbalanced. And I have just kind of given myself all to this person, and I've lost myself in that. And I become obsessed with trying to fix this person. And maybe that's not the approach, right? And I know that my mom absolutely loves me, cares about me immensely, wants nothing but the best for me. But that didn't get me sober. I mean, my mom's saying, I think one of the things that people hate hearing the most is having a parent say, I'm disappointed, right? I'm disappointed. And that hits at a lot of people when they hear that from their parent. And people might change from that, but even that couldn't change anything. And so, yeah, I believe that it's a family disease because it affects the family. It's not just an isolated thing. And it's like kind of what I talked about earlier. If my family is going to share in your success, and they're going to share in your tragedies, right? And there's no escaping that. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. What was your second question? I forgot.
I don't know if I had a second question.
Maybe.
I mean, I've got a second question now, but I don't think I had one at the time that I asked that one.
Maybe not. I love talking about this topic. I love talking about the effects that it had. And really, I love talking about the effects that recovery has on the family and what it has on the psyche of the parents and of the child going through that. And the ability to allow recovery to work. One thing that I've been talking a lot about with some friends of mine is the process, right? Falling in love with the recovery process. And that is so hard to do, right? So when I think of like great athletes, I think of like Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, all of these athletes. And what you don't see is the endless nights in the gym, the multiple shots that they're taking, the laughter and the crying and the frustration and all of those things. You don't see that. What you see is the end result. You see greatness happen. And that's what recovery is to me, is that a lot of people don't see the conversations that I have with other folks in recovery, or the crying and the shedding of, it's like an onion and peeling back layers of this onion, right? And getting to the root causes and conditions of addiction, and how I can and use that as a means to help someone else. People don't see that process, and falling in love with that takes time. But that's where the beautiful thing about recovery happens. And that's where the magic is that after a period of time, people start to see the results of it. And that's one of them, right? Is I'm about to get a master's degree. And it's that's the result of the falling in love with the process.
Dustin, I like that you talked about the family recovery, because I think that's an important part of, kind of the other side of the coin to this being a family disease, because it's not like you flip a switch, like, okay, I didn't use, and now I have a month of sobriety, and now I haven't used for 6 months, and, now 10 years, and like suddenly everything's better. The family has steps that they have to take, and trust gets rebuilt, and new patterns in the family. Dustin's bringing up some of the things about family roles. So if someone's been that scapegoat, or they've been that hero, that golden child, where they've been the overachiever in schools, how they've defined themselves, or they've been, the child that didn't want to cause any problems. All those different roles, they still exist. The siblings still have what they've been doing, while the brother, sister, other family member has had, their own hurdles to jump. So I think that's an important part of this that sometimes gets forgotten, because, you take a deep breath, like, okay, they're okay, they're safe. And as time goes by, then you can take even a deeper breath and say, okay, they're safe. And it's important that as that family unit becomes healthier, that some new patterns are developed and new relationships are really forged.
Right.
I love that conversation about the process of recovery and how that kind of gets ignored. Like, in a nutshell, how would you guys define the process of recovery for someone who's in recovery from the substance use disorder but also how would you define the process of recovery for the other family members who aren't the identified substance user?
Sure. Okay, so the person in recovery, I think that process is finding what recovery works for you, right? It could be AA, NA, Smart Recovery, Refuge Recovery. I mean, there's a bunch, and it's finding what speaks to you. A lot of times you'll hear that recovery is the language of the heart, right? And whatever's going to speak to you inwardly is where you should go, right? So there's no monopoly on recovery. It's as long as people get it and it changes them. They have a psychic change, if you will. And that recovery process is different for everyone. So just in my own experience, and it's the only experience that I can speak on, is that, I was encouraged to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And when I heard that in treatment, I was like, you're absolutely out of your mind. I don't even know what that means. 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't even know how long 90 days is. Like, I was just very combative. I was like, I'm not going to do that. What's 90 days? No one even does anything for 90 days. Please tell me what that means. I was just very combative. And, it's 3 months for people who are not mathematicians. So I did way over 90 meetings in 90 days. And it was, I was just done. I was just absolutely beat up. And I don't want to say beat up like externally. I definitely look beat up. But I'm talking about inwardly, like the inward self-talk, right? The inward image that I had toward myself. I was a shell of a human being. And the paradox is that I thought I had it all together, right? I'm good. I know everything, but deep down inside, I was absolutely and utterly afraid of you, of myself, and I didn't know how to not be. And so I used, and the process for me was that 90 meetings in 90 days, well over 90 meetings in 90 days. I lived and I breathed recovery, 12-step recovery. And I listened to what other people had to say, and there was nothing perfect about that. It was ugly all the way through. It was like ugly crying for like 2 years. Just, I made mistakes. I didn't make mistakes. I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Right. But I was supported at a fundamental level with a recovery community around me that allowed for that to happen. Right. And it was the first time in my life that I never felt judgment, because they were on the same level I was. They shared the same experience, strength, and hope in their meetings that I was sharing. And so there was a fundamental tone that we just understood each other. And so that process of like finding out who I am and what I like and what I don't like, and having fun. That's one thing that is not talked about enough, is community and fun. I had so much fun. I have so much fun in recovery. And just with the community that's around me, right? Because why would I not? These are the people that can speak to me, right? So of course, this is like my tribe. So of course I'm going to have fun with these people. And I think the other part of that, so that's kind of my process, right? Is that finding who and what I am, and within a supportive environment. And I think the other piece to that, the family piece, is the same exact thing, right? Is finding that piece that can support you, the piece that can rally around you, and that you can talk to other parents about, your struggles and your worries and your fears and your anxiety and your depression and all those things that come up, to be able to talk to other parents and other community members about those things in a very transparent way. Recovery was the first time in my life that I talked to someone in the most transparent and honest way, because what else am I going to lose? Right. Like, I couldn't lose anything else, so I felt, and so I feel like it's the same way as a parent. I get told a lot, it's not until you have a kid until you understand. And it's like, I understand intellectually what you're saying, but at the same time, I also know what depression feels like. I know what anxiety feels like. I know what feeling like you're hopeless feels like, so I don't know if I necessarily have to have a child to understand what those feelings feel like. And it's also that the recovery community isn't just people in recovery. It's the families afterwards, right? The families that are also in recovery that can rally around each other. So that would be my input as far as the process for someone in recovery and the parents that are dealing with someone who's suffering from substance use disorder.
Yeah.
I guess when I think about process, I think, clinically of like my mind goes to like stages of change and where there's like different interventions for different stages. And so like the quick version, if you're not familiar with that, is there's different stages. This is like mid-90s stuff like Di-Clemente and Prochaska, but pre-Clemente or pre-contemplation is like when someone doesn't recognize that there's a problem. It's just mom, just dad, maybe just my probation officer that sees that I have a substance use problem. I don't have a problem. Then moving into contemplation where you're like on that fence, you're like, yeah, I probably do, but I'm not sure if I want to change. I kind of like my habits right now. And then you move to preparation where you're starting to consider making a change, not making that yet. You haven't turned the corner to make the change, but you're thinking about it. So then you move into that action where you're actually taking steps to work towards your recovery. And sustained action lends itself to the maintenance, which would be like 6 months or more of continuing that long-term recovery. And then relapse or reoccurrence is also in there. And that stages of change is not just for the individual who's using. You could apply that also to the parent. You can be a parent and say, my child does not have a problem. No, not at all, pre-contemplation. You could finally turn where you're like, okay, yes, we have a problem. I'm gonna take action. I'm gonna attend that parents helping parents meeting, or I'm going to set some different boundaries with my child, so you could be taking those action steps. So when I think about that process of recovery, that's where my head goes. But what I also know in my heart is that where your child is and where you are as a parent, those things are not always matching up. Your child could, and we just heard some of that from Dustin, what you might be seeing on the outside is that they don't care, they're just making this mistake, or they're not even showing, up for family functions or doing what they said. But in their heart, they want to be making that decision. And until that very moment when they begin to use, they have every intention of staying sober that day, or they have every intention of doing exactly what they said that they would do. And they're in that preparation stage. And then something happens. And just like that, then active use has occurred. So I think as family members, we simplify it too much in our own heads if we don't have our own substance use disorders, because we think it's like this cut or dry, like yes or no, easy kind of thing. And there's all this gray area to someone who is struggling to recover and overcome substance use disorder. And I think that's important for family members to see, and even coming to terms with, okay, I'm ready. That's on a different timeline than what your loved one might be on for themselves.
Yeah, one of the catches in what you were talking about, Jen, that I see a lot of families kind of getting hung up in is they're in this stage of change, or the family's in a certain stage of change, and they're in the action stage, but the action is, okay, now we're ready for them to take action. Right, we're ready for
great point
to take action. What, Dustin, or one of you earlier, I think it might have been Dustin in his introduction, talked about owning your recovery and that everybody in the family's got to own that. So when a family as support people are moving through those stages of change and they're ready to begin to take action, what does it look like for families to own their part in the family disease and find recovery?
So I'll start that, and then Dustin, you pick up with what your thoughts are. So I feel like that's things like attending Al-Anon, or attending a parents helping parents meeting, finding another family member who has kind of walked in those same shoes and reaching out for support. There's some great, different hotlines that you can call and get parent coaching. So, that would be a great action step. Reading literature that's about yourself and your own recovery as a parent, and not, as Derek's saying, not, when is my son, when is my daughter, when is my child going to change? If your child is involved in active treatment, seeing if there are options for family counseling, that would be another step in that direction. And not blaming yourself, because this isn't a blame. No one's benefits by pointing fingers, but starting to look at your own behavior. Where can boundaries be set differently? how can I say things in a different way? What can my internal actions be that could ultimately play, a big part in our family's healing would be, I think, a good place to start.
Yeah, great points. I think the taking ownership of the recovery is, gosh, I don't know if I could say it any better. It's just being able to understand that one of the biggest things I think it happens is denial, right? Is that can't happen to my child, right? That's not really happening. Like my child's not doing that. There's no way that they're shooting up heroin, right? That there's no way that they're taking fentanyl. There's no way that they're blacking out to Xanax. There's no way. There's no way. I think a lot of times parents kind of block that out because they don't want that for their child, right? I think it would be kind of strange if a parent was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's probably what they're doing. Yeah, I don't think that that's the case. So I think owning that is really important, and then doing something about that, right? So I think one of the time, one thing is if I'm going to recovery, that parent going to recovery too, right? And it may feel unfair, right? Like it may feel unfair of like, man, like I've gone through like hell and back with my child, and they need to get in recovery, and then after they get in recovery, all will be well. And I wish that was the case. There were in my first early years of recovery, my mom and I still argued, we still argue today, and it's mostly because of me, and it's gotten a lot better, but like, that's what happens. And I think being able to learn appropriate communication skills and boundaries, and being able to set those boundaries and stick by those boundaries. I think a lot of times that's what parents struggle with is keeping like saying a boundary, like for instance, saying, hey, you're not coming back home. And that's a boundary that's not going to be violated anymore, because once a child does violate that boundary, that takes a piece of you, right? Because you're like, gosh, like they're getting their way here and I don't know what to do. Right. And so then that happens over and over and over again. And parents will go into this denial phase, and it's like, no, that's not really happening. That's really happening. And then, years later, either they lose their loved one to addiction, or they find recovery and they heal together. And I think community is a big piece in that. You find people that can speak the language of the heart to you in a way that is profound, that is in a way that can really really amend your life, really like change it completely. And I know for me that recovery has absolutely changed everything. I could tell you this, I would put money on the fact that my mom, my sister, no one, including myself, I put money on myself. No one thought I'd be getting a master's degree of any kind. Nobody, right? Yeah. And that's what recovery is able to do is it changes that relationship. So yes, for parents, I think it's just sticking to those boundaries. It's utilizing the resources that you have. And I'll tell you this, I wish that my mom knew about helping parents 10 years ago. I wish that this resource was available to my mom. Now I don't know if she would have used it or not. I don't know. But the fact that it was there, fact that someone else could kind of jump in that hole with her and say, hey, I know what you're going through. And here's my experience, strength, and hope with that, to give my mom some hope. Because at the time I was dealing with ADHD, I was dealing with depression, anxiety. I mean, all of these things. And my mom was doing everything she could for me. I mean, I went to behavioral treatment, one time. I've gone to, I can't tell you how many psychiatrists and therapists, all of those things from the age of 13 to really 18 years old. And my mom was doing everything in her power to help me, but what I needed was people to be able to speak my language. That's what I needed, and I think that's the same thing for parents.
So I love that you're bringing that up, Dustin, because we talk a lot about how, addiction is isolating. And I think it's such an important point. You were talking about wishing that there was a group like Parents Helping Parents for your mom. It's isolating to be a parent and to not know how to help your child, and to have that realization that my great love for this human being is not enough. And that love, I think that if there's no bounds to a parent's love for their child. And so just knowing that I can't change this person that I've cared about since the beginning, and that there was a point in your relationship when you could, if you think back to when, kids are younger, you can kind of, for the most part, put them in a bubble or make sure that they're cared for in a certain way, but that changes and that love is not enough anymore. And so it's so isolating, and it can be really easy as a parent to just put those love blinders on and think, if I can love the addiction out of my child. And that's where, we're talking about the stages of change where, that really you have to begin to see the fallacy in that, and to see that it's important to turn that corner and start to work on your own journey, and that no amount of love, can really change your child's path. But it is important that they know that you love them. And so being able to separate those two things out, and separating that I love you and not your behavior, and figuring out how you say that in your parent words is I think really also fundamental to letting that relationship begin to heal.
Well said.
Yeah. So a couple of kind of direct questions about families and recovery. What happens when one member of the family is in one stage of that change and another member is in another stage? Like maybe somebody's in action, but maybe somebody over here is all the way back in pre-contemplation. Like, what can families do to maybe pull along people in that process in a healthy way?
I think one thing you could do is reach out to a licensed marriage and family therapist, right? I think that's one thing you can do. I think recognizing that, right? And vocalizing that. So it's like, hey, I'm ready to take some action right now. I'm ready to not allow this person to come back home. I'm ready for them to figure this out, live on the streets if that's what they need to. You got another parent saying, I'm just not ready. I'm not there. I'm not there. I want our door to be open, right? Two completely different pages. I think it would be very smart and wise to be able to vocalize that, but you probably have to learn how to do that, right? So utilizing your resources like Parents Helping Parents, but recognizing that you're on two different pages, and that, you know what, it's okay, right? It's okay to be on two different pages. I think so long as you're taking active steps to get on the same page, right? So like seeing a licensed marriage and family therapist would to me be something, a proactive step to get on that same page. Seeking out Parents Helping Parents and parents to be able to get on that same page, and just giving each other that space. You've gone through a lot. And you're going through a lot. And just giving each other some grace, right? And allowing each other to be able to just, do this. You have your shoulders up here and just be able to just breathe and just let them relax for a second, and that you're a team and you're fighting for the same thing, right? And I think it's just being able to utilize the resources around you, because it's just like, if it's just like a sponsor and a sponsee. So a sponsor is someone who sponsors someone in 12-step, right? If I've got someone and I'm a sponsor, and there's someone who asks for my help, but they're really not willing to get help, like we're on two different playing fields, right? So I've got to give them some grace, and I got to give them some time to kind of digest and be who they are and kind of come to terms with that. Now, obviously that's hard when you're married, because you're living in the same house, and maybe you're at odds, right? Maybe you're sleeping on the couch and the other person's not. But I think what it is being able to be proactive. And so that's what it is if I have a sponsee, it's like I would ask them to be proactive in what their recovery is, so that we can eventually get caught up together. And so that would be my suggestion is just give each other grace and seek out those resources together.
I think Dustin's right that formal supports can be really, really helpful. I think in families, it's also really important to remember that we're not mind readers. And so, you're a significant other, or you're another child in the family, or, you might live with other relatives in the family, or maybe it's just a close family unit. So a lot of people are being directly impacted, that they might appear to be somewhere and they're really not, because internally are processing that, or they're getting really angry in ways that you're not used to. And so you think they're taking it out, and they're really just doing the very, very best that they can. So Dustin mentioned giving individuals grace, I think is important. I think oftentimes it's also important to say we might not be on the same page, but let's work this out together before we, start to have individual conversations with the individual that's either trying to get in recovery or not there yet, but the one that's actively using, because that can set up a really messy triangle if you have, different parents that are doing different things and bartering and giving different things to the individual that's still actively using. So I think that, when possible is really important to avoid. There's also situations with separated parents or divorced families, and sometimes those families will come together in beautiful ways and be able to support each other. So just like there's all types of families, I think there's lots of different ways to really work this out in the way that works best for an individual family. When an person in your family, though, if you're on a more preparation or action stage, and you're ready to take some steps, and people in your family that are really also, are concerned about the individual using or not there yet, education is a really good tool. So, if there's anything that they can read, or if you found something that you read that was really helpful, that's where I think the parent coaching and the partnership for drug-free kids, that website can have information, because if someone's really not ready to hear all of that at once yet, giving information in very bite-sized, manageable doses, and trying to slowly open the door is going to be a lot more respected and received well than just opening the door super fast and wide and saying, why don't you think everything I think in the same manner that I do? Because that can just make it already isolating situation feel even more isolating, because just because you're going through this with individuals at your same home doesn't mean that that you're all on that same page. So that's a great question, Derek.
Yeah. Dustin, I know that you can't read your mom's mind, but I'm going to ask you to step into her experience of your early sobriety days. If we asked your mom, what do you wish you would have known then that you know now, what do you think she might tell us?
Oh man, I'm sure she'll comment on this as we're talking. So let's play a little game. Let's see if I can get it somewhere close. Sorry, I don't know. So the question is, what if I was my mom, what would I wish I knew then that I know now?
Yeah.
Oh man.
10 years out, you're going to have a MSW. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, 10 years of sobriety and have a graduate degree.
That's a really hard question. I don't know. I don't know what she would have wished that she knew, then that she knows now. I think, here's what I'm going to, my best educated guess is going to be that, is allowing me to find my own way. Right. And, sorry, it made me emotional.
That's all right.
Like wow, that came out of nowhere. About maybe like 4 days or so before I got sober, hopefully for the last time, I told my mom that I was shooting up heroin and cocaine, and my mom was going through a tough time in her life, and I told her what I was going through, and I had just gotten out of being locked up for 6 months, and I told my mom what I was doing, and I was like, I need you to send me to treatment, full well knowing that she couldn't afford for me to go to treatment. And my mom said the things that I think that were instrumental in saving my life. And it was, where the answers are. I don't have the answers for you. And And I absolutely resented her when she said that to me at that time, right? Like now the emotions come up because it's all hindsight's 2020, right? But during that moment when she said that, I knew she was right. And I hated her for it, you know, because I didn't want that to be the solution, right? I didn't want recovery essentially to be the solution. I wanted someone to save me. I wanted someone to fix me, because I'd always felt my whole life that I was just born without the blueprint of life, right? I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants and just try to figure it out as I went along. And when my mom, like I said earlier, you know, she sent me to the psychiatrist and the therapist and got me on the ADHD medications and worked with my teachers who I absolutely terrorized when I was a young kid. And, you know, she went through a hard time with me, a really hard time. And you know, to a point where I think I helped drive her into depression, and for her to have the courage to say that to me, I know hurt her. You know what I mean? Because it was a mom not knowing what to do, and I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional, but it's a topic that hits home with a lot of people. And a lot of parents, especially because they don't want their loved one to go through this, right? Like no one does. It's you're literally watching someone suffer and you don't have the answer to it. And so her saying that to me, I think is something that she might have guessed saying back then, because I think back then she was too worried about fixing me and getting me the right solution versus allowing me to just say, you've got to figure this out, buddy. And I love you. And whatever the outcome is going to be is what the outcome is going to be. And luckily, I had just been broken enough to walk into some 12-step recovery, and it fundamentally changed my life. And so that's what I would guess. So now without the emotions, being on the game show that you just put me on, I wonder if I'm close, because I bet she should.
She did. She said that she wished that she would have known more patience.
Yeah. Me
Which
too.
seems like a very mom thing to say.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would have guessed for sure.
Yeah. I want to remind everybody that we've got a live text line going. It's in the description of the video, or in the title, actually, the subtitle. So if you've got questions for Jennifer and Dustin, text those over. We'd love to answer those. As we're waiting to see if anybody's got questions. If I was going to say, here's another game show question, like you've got 30 seconds. Each of you have 30 seconds to deliver a message to parents who have a child that's struggling currently with substance use disorders. What would be in your 60-second message? Did I say 30 seconds? I'll give you 60. I'm going to double it.
Are you asking me?
Both of you.
What's the question again?
You each get 60 seconds.
Oh God.
Right? And in that 60 seconds, I want you to deliver a message to parents who currently have a child struggling with substance use. Can be a message of any type. What would you want your 60-second message to them to be?
Jennifer, you've got to go first because I was on the game show already and I've got to have a good luck.
Gosh, yeah, that's like a whole thesis. But I think what I would want parents to know is, number one, that you're not alone. That there are supports out there for you, and that it's so important that you do your own work, because yes, your child could have, your child could be sitting here like Dustin is and have this wonderful success story, but sometimes the road is rocky, and sometimes the road is really, really bumpy. So you have to do your own work, and you have to find your own formal supports or informal supports, figure out who those trusted friends are, figure out what's going to help keep you moving and keep you going. Because at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, when that child does need you, when they are ready to, if that time comes, ready to restore a relationship, or if they have worked on their recovery and you can start to mend things, if you haven't done your own work, then you're not going to be ready. And what a missed opportunity if you haven't spent your time, really thinking about how can you, make the most out of the life that is right in front of you. So those would be my takeaways. Is there's, I would love to say that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes that tunnel is really long and has lots of curves, and you just don't know when that's going to be. And because it can be so lonely in the darkness, the more people that you can have there with you is really the only way to find your way out. And hopefully you have a relationship with your child on the other side. But I guarantee you that doing your work as you in that really, really dark space will make whatever awaits you on the other side much more bearable than if you try to walk that journey alone.
Yeah, good stuff.
Response. I think my response to that question would be the same response that my mom gave me, is that if you've gone to treatment, you know where the answers are. If you've had the privilege of having gone to treatment, whether that be state funded treatment, which is where I went, or private pay or private insurance, I also went there. And I know for a fact that if you go to a treatment, you're going to hear about recovery supportive services. And I think for the parents is that allow for that process to do what it does, and to kind of take your hand out of that cookie jar in a sense of trying to control it and manipulate it and make sure that person's going to get. But I'll tell you this: my mom never once in the almost 10 years that I've been sober ever tried to get involved in my recovery, not one time. And I think she needed that. She needed that break for herself. And I needed her to not get involved. I needed to figure it out myself. I needed to make some mistakes. I needed to find my tribe. I needed to find my people and make mistakes in doing that. And she allowed for me to do that. So I would say that just you're gonna have to, if it's tough, it's like what Jennifer was talking about. This is not easy. I mean, obviously, people watching, you see the emotions that come up kind of unprovoked, or well, it was provoked. Thanks a lot, Derek. But it touches home, and it'll always touch home. Recovery fundamentally changed my life, but I needed that kind of push out of the nest a little bit, and some firm boundaries. And my mom stuck to them. And so I would say that, yeah, stick to those boundaries. If they've gone through some treatment, or if they've gone to some type of 12-step recovery or whatever recovery, they know where the answers are. And I would just encourage them to do that,
Yeah.
Derek, can I have a round two, like a lightning round?
Yes, of course.
So the other is, as I'm hearing Dustin think, I think the other thing I would really want parents to know is to don't blame yourself. That recovery is not something that anyone wins when we start pointing fingers at ourselves or the individual that's working out their substance use disorder too. But I have seen way too many people blame, bad parenting, and I'm using the quotes if you didn't, see that, because it's recovery. Addiction in families is not the culmination or the result of bad parenting, bad families. It happens to every type of family and every type of situation. And so that's another key piece that I would want family members to know.
On that real quick is that recovery doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how rich and wealthy you are. It doesn't care how poor you are. It doesn't matter about your gender identity or the color of your skin or your religious beliefs. It doesn't care. And it's not going to pick and choose. It's also not a moral failing. It's not because you didn't go to church enough or that you weren't born into a good family. It's none of that. But at the same time, I think it's addressing that. It's addressing that it exists and that we're not going to brush this under the rug or hide this in our closet. But it's talking about it as a family, coming together as a family to seek out recovery.
Yeah. Excellent. Hey guys, thank you so much. Like, you two make my job so much easier, because you're great and you've got valuable insights and you're willing to be vulnerable. Sorry, Dustin, um, wasn't intentional. Um, your mom
It-
actually sent me a list of things to ask. She was like, make sure you ask him this. That'll work. No, thank you guys. One is just thank you both for being who you are, like just as people. Thank you for your commitment to recovery and to training professionals and to getting the message out there, and for really everything, Jennifer, that you've done over your entire career for the state of Oklahoma and for mental health and substance abuse, and Dustin, for what you've already done, but what I know you're going to continue to do for the duration of your career, in social work. And hopefully you only get licensed in the state of Oklahoma and you're not ever allowed to go practice anywhere else, because you got to stay here.
Yeah. Well, it's not too bad here. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Not
So Derek, Dustin and I think everyone knows we are part of Students in Recovery on University of Oklahoma's campus. And I just, in case anyone's listening that is affiliated with OU and has, and is the friend or a family member of someone who is in recovery or seeking recovery, we're going to be starting groups starting next week that are for friends and family members of individuals who are in recovery. There's going to be a number of other groups too, but that one is particularly important for this group tonight. So if you don't already, follow Students in Recovery on social media, and you can find out more about those groups, because that would be great, a great way to, or if you have other children, if you're watching this and you have a daughter or son or another child that is really worried about their sibling who's trying to find recovery, it'd be a great outlet for that individual. So check out Students in Recovery's Facebook for more info on that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to help end stigma. We want to help end shame. We want everyone to be able to have the accessibility to get into recovery, to be able to flourish in their academic career if that's what they want to do, or if they don't even know that's what they want to do, let it be a possibility for them. So I'm super excited to work with the School of Social Work and the Southwest Prevention Center. Where, like Jennifer said, we've got, just real briefly, we've got Healthy Habits for Emotional Sobriety, which is a new group that's going to happen. We've got Body Positivity that's going to be addressing eating disorders. That's going to be an educational group. I'm really excited about that. And of course, the friends and family group. So we're growing slowly but surely. But like Jennifer said, if you could give us a like or a share, that would be huge. Thanks.
For sure. Hey, thank you guys for your time tonight. Really, it means a lot to me that you guys take time out of your family, away from family and friends, to do this. I appreciate it. I know Parents Helping Parents appreciates it. For people that joined us for the live stream, you took time out of your night too. There's 1,000 different ways you could be spending your Monday. We appreciate you spending it with us. Hopefully you gained something of value tonight. If you need more resources or more help, please reach out to Parents Helping Parents, either on our Facebook page, Parents Helping Parents Inc., or at our website, www.parentshelpingparents.info. If you're in the Norman area and you need help, reach out to Students in Recovery, the School of Social Work. We've got resources all over the state. We want to help connect you so that you can get well. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek.
Have a good night.